You guys are seeing much better than me. You're about 2 meters above my head. Tripod lifted to the maximum. And something very special over here I have to show you right now. We're going to leave the sunrise for a second. And we're going to look in the opposite direction. And what do we see? The moon setting. The full moon is waning. Just about waning. And there it's setting over Mount Arbel. Isn't that marvelous? And if you want to go back to the Sunday video, on Sunday evening, the special one we did was on Mount Nitai, over there behind the electric pole. We came up on the back of that mountain where there are beautiful mango plantations, orchards. And here we are, the harvest continues, people, the harvest continues. This is just so marvelous. We're seeing a little bit less of the Sea of Galilee, but this harvest thing really is catching our lives, our souls. Harvest is so important. You know, why plow? Or in our case at home, bulldoze some fields, reclaim them from all of the weeds and bushes and stones. Why do all that work if you're not going to sow the field? And why sow the field if you're not going to take care of the growth and fertilize it and manage it as best as possible with the resources at hand? And why do all that if you're not going to harvest? Harvesting the field. Look at the aftergrowth that's coming already, pretty strong. The green tinge coming there. You hear all the birds? This is very little trafficked area right here, so the birds feel at home. It's their paradise. And they're welcoming us in this morning with their song. Actually, at home in Ireland, in my time in the 60s on the farm and into the 70s, there was a big swing towards reclamation of land that wasn't properly and well used. And it was needed because there was actually still a lot of poverty in Ireland in the rural area. And then it was realized that by taking out a lot of overgrown hedges, habitat was removed. So then there were regulations to make sure that some hedgerows were kept. And especially our area, which is so unique, called the Burren, B-U-R-R-E-N. You can Google it. The Burren is a very unique landscape topography. Well, look at our friends here. Well, not friends really, because they're poisonous, but they look good. And there you have another view of the moon going down. It's interesting how the angle changes, and now it's a little bit further higher, it looks like, than the mountain than it did a few moments ago. Well, let's go in closer and say hello to the moon. We're not on a satellite, but we got closer to the moon there. So provision, there was it's a lot of limestone, and you'd have places where there was like 30% of this rock covering the ground and the rest was clay. And a lot of farmers worked very hard over the years, and as machinery improved, it was easier to do it. Became a little bit economical. But then by the same token, a lot of that landscape was being damaged, being destroyed, the original limestone land. So then that became regulated in my county, County Clare, and it wasn't regulated in Galway. So that was also an amazing thing, how some peoples take care, some communities, some areas take care of their treasures, and other people put their first priority in other things, or it's not a priority for them because it's just not on the radar, not so significant. So here we have a very wild-grown area. I was fascinated this morning. I came here. I don't think I stood on this piece of ground for a number of years. And here there's a path. Hey, how would you like to walk on that path? And it went along here, and it went through here. I think right there actually is where the path was. Just right in front of the center of the screen. And now it's completely overcome because by nature, because we didn't walk there for the last few years due to the high waters. See, the water is here, so it's not a problem right here, but then you just go on here a few more yards and you're in a low spot again, and then it's all cut off, so you don't have the possibility to walk through. So when you stop walking through, what happens? If you learn a language and you don't use it, you lose it. And if you don't use the path, you lose it. If you don't use your skills, you lose it. If you don't use your muscles, you lose them. If you don't practice the language, you lose it. So that's life. It's important for us to exercise our faith. That's why also going to church on Sunday, that's why praying before meals, this is all so important. If you don't use it, you lose it. We human beings have somehow a short memory in some ways, and we just need to do it. I don't know if I was asked now to change the tire of a wheel of a car, I'd have a hard time, probably because they're differently made today. But we used to take off wheels, the tire of tractors. That was very hard work. And a neighbor of ours had a tremendous accident doing that. I won't describe it, spoil your morning, but he suffered a lot for a while over that. And how do you do those things? You know, how you learn to do all the skills we have. So just like a pathway can be grown over and become unused, so much of human accomplishment can be lost. And so there we have the harvesting. Harvesting is so important. This is a different field. We weren't in this one. This is very close to Magdala. There's probably 3 properties between us and Magdala here. And some things that we don't harvest, like the fruit of this tree, maybe there's a use for it, I'm not sure. They look like little crab apples, don't they? I'm not sure what they are. If somebody knows apple trees, crab apples. This is something else. Somebody told me there's a nap out there, but there's so much in a day, you know, and I leave some of this to you. It'd be nice to learn more about it. I'm really terribly sorry about a great professor here, Avinoam Danin. May he be of blessed memory, a professor at Hebrew University of Botany. He was one of Israel's greatest botanists, and he wrote, I think, about 16 books or 14 books of botany. And he passed away in December about 5 years ago. He was very close to one of our priests because they did a lot of work together on the Shroud of Turin. And he always wanted me to go walking with him, and I said, as soon as I know Hebrew, because I wanted to do it in Hebrew, but that never happened. It's got really delayed, and now I can speak Hebrew, and every time I see the plants and I walk in the wild, I remember that good man and the work he did. He actually published a book also on the botany of the Shroud of Turin. Very interesting book. These are really big. Look at my hand here. And then you have tiny flowers as well, you know. And there we have the darnel. So people, another couple of thoughts about the harvest. You know, this is a very big theme, actually. It's not done in one day, and we still have more for a couple more days, I think, in our harvest series. And we're only in April. I remember as a child, on a Good Friday. It's a Good Friday I remember when I was a child, and we weren't in church or anything, but we were sowing barley. The weather there made the agenda for us, for our family. So I was very small, and the barley was sown on that Good Friday. And that would have to be, maybe it was very early at the end of March, or maybe it was April. I'd have to do a little bit of consultation to find out when it was. But here we're harvesting in April. Because the harsh time for nature here is not the winter, but it's the summer heat. It's not the winter cold and ice and frost that shrivels up nature, it's the burning heat. Now here we have another big flower. This is as big as I have seen. And there are a lot of little creatures here working. They're doing their harvest. Let me zoom in for you. That's not even zoomed in, guys, okay? Now these aren't normal ants, so they're something else. They're like beetles, are they? Sorry, let me go at this another angle here. They're all busy, and they look like they're harvesting too. They're looking for something else. It's their time. Yeah, they're alive. I thought for a moment they weren't doing anything, but they're busy. And there's probably a symbiosis going on here where they're doing something that's good for the next generation of this plant while benefiting themselves at the moment. Imagine what we do with 2 hands. Imagine if we had that many hands. Or legs. Interesting, isn't it? Let's see how the sun is doing here. So I got a very nice note because of the commentaries about the gleaning. Somebody did a very beautiful favor who participates, and here there's a great culture of that coming from biblical times. And there are many expressions of it, like this lady's across from her home, there's a carrot farm. And when the machinery goes through, obviously it misses a lot of carrots. So what does the farmer do? He invites all the neighbors to come and pick all the carrots from the field. And some schools come along with the children, or the families bring their children, and they realize that carrots don't come from supermarkets. They come from the earth. They don't come in plastic bags. And you can get your hands dirty finding them and harvesting them. What a beautiful experience for a child to discover harvesting. And then not only that, but here in Israel, there's an organization called Lechet, I understand that's the word for gleaning. And they gather not only food from the harvest, but especially from the hotels and catering houses. There's always so much food in our times that's thrown out. And they have high standards of caution and care, and provide a lot of food for the needy. And this organization brings that to organizations that serve the needy. And so waste is avoided and people who are poor are taken care of. I remember when we were children, my dad would often repeat a line, "Willful waste makes woeful want." And I think he had that from his father, if I remember him saying that, I'm almost sure. and he would quote his father, "Willful waste makes woeful want." So we were very well formed and raised in a spirit of not wasting food. And the dog got some little leftovers, and also the pigs obviously ate a lot of food and were able to take care of anything. So food wasn't wasted in our home. And we would go to school, we took care of our sandwich. And this was a very good spirit. And I think our world needs this again. There's a lot of waste. A word Pope Francis uses a lot is, not a very happy camper about this, obviously, a throwaway culture. How much waste? And how we need to treasure the beautiful gifts of nature and of the Creator, and also of so much human labor. I find it terrible to be throwing out so many things that have so much genius in them, how they're made, and work that was put in, and earned money that was spent, resources that were used. In that sense, I think there are some wonderful paragraphs in Laudato Si', this writing of Pope Francis about the care of nature. And that hymn starts off with, that writing starts off with Laudato Si', may you be praised, may God be praised for the sun and the moon and the crops and the nature and the cycles of the seasons. There was another very beautiful experience I cherish. I was in a church in Denver. I think it's called St. Thomas More, and it probably happens in many other churches across America and maybe in other countries. But I thought this practice was amazing. How it was the little children, and they weren't even gone to Holy Communion yet. So what do little children in a church have to do? Well, basically keep their mouth shut and be quiet. But these children had a very positive role. And there were lots of them. It's a big, thriving suburban parish with lots of young families and lots of children. And sure enough, at the time I was concelebrating Mass there, maybe the pastor had asked me also to speak, to preach. And when it came to time for the collection, the ones who went to get the baskets were the little children, and they went around from row to row, and the people put in their offerings. Offerings for the needy, offerings for famine victims, offerings for refugees, for people being persecuted. You know, to have this spirit of teaching the children the joy, and the children were so happy because they were able to run around, because they couldn't run around church, but now they could go around and move. And they were getting all these smiles from the people as they dropped in. And the people were so moved to put in their offering because they had this smiling child coming with their little sibling that was barely able to walk. And it was amazing to watch them going up the steps. There were like 4 or 5 steps going up to the sanctuary area and the altar. And you have the children scrambling up there, and the little one falls, and the older brother or sister helps the little one up, you know. But this whole experience of being trained in, and how to train children in giving, in the joy of giving, in the joy of thinking of the needy, those who don't have a big abundant row of wheat in their harvest and who need our support because their health is broken or their political system is broken, or they lack the culture of how to go and develop a life, a job, a career, and they need a lot of help, they need a leg up. Isn't that wonderful? Just amazing, just beautiful, just a great way to do it. Spread the word, people. There are lots of ways that we can train the next generation into generosity, that they're discovering the joy of living with and for others. It happens with little things, starting small, like each big harvest starts with little seeds planted in the ground. Each big marathon starts with the first step. We've talked a lot again about the harvest today, and we still have more coming, people. Just some beautiful thoughts coming for the harvest, so we'll continue with this series. I think people are liking it. And we're here at the Sea of Galilee. You can see a little sheen right underneath the sun there, and between the trees. Underneath the trees, you can see that's a reflection of the Sea of Galilee. So it's very little today. Let me lift you up here. Maybe you can see an inch more than me. So you're back down on Earth again. You just landed here on Mars. So just switch over to the readings for a moment. It's very interesting to see within a synagogue in the first century, Paul is telling the story, and he's telling it in the terms of the Jewish memory of their people. And this was typically what he did. He went from synagogue to synagogue, just like Jesus did here in Galilee, went from synagogue to synagogue. And I think there'll be part 2 tomorrow, because obviously the story here stops with John the Baptist. But it's interesting how this great memory of telling, and some people take issue when I say that the New Testament is Jewish literature. They're surprised. Rabbis are surprised, and Christians are surprised. But actually the New Testament is Jews telling Jews about Jewish content and with a Jewish mindset. And if you have a Russian telling Russians about Russian self-understanding with the Russian mindset, and that becomes a book, you call that Russian literature. It's definitely not Irish, definitely not South African or Chilean or Malaysian. It's Russian literature. And so this New Testament, it's an interesting thought just to think about that when you read that paragraph today from the Acts of the Apostles. In chapter 13, you have the link there for you attached to the post. Forever I will sing the goodness of the Lord. That's a great one at harvest time, isn't it? Forever I will sing the goodness of the Lord. I think I must be very near something important for these birds. I'm not going to hurt them, but they're kind of nervous that I'm here. You can hear them for that reason, squeaking, squeaking, squeaking. And in the Gospel, it's interesting that here in the Easter time now, in the 4th week of Easter, we're reading a passage today from John chapter 13. And we'll be reading more because in the Last Supper, Jesus speaks a lot about the Holy Spirit who comes, and we're heading into Pentecost soon. You know, Pentecost is the feast of the harvest of wheat, the wheat harvest feast. And it's when Jesus had washed the disciples' feet. That's all so interesting, you know, how leadership thinks to wash the feet of the other, to serve. In a family, the strongest child to help the child who's struggling with the alphabet or struggling with writing, and the parents help the older child not to despise their little sibling, but to help them. And we need this worldwide, this spirit in the family, in the community, at the university, in the schools, at the workplace, to help the one that needs a leg up. And then at the end of the gospel passage, we have a very, very powerful word. Because all the gospel is revealing the nature of Jesus, who he is. Who is Jesus? And in this intimate setting with just the disciples, the closest disciples, at the Last Supper, and he's about to die, you think of a family where a parent is conscious and knows that their time is up, and the children are around the bed, and the deepest things of the heart can come forth. It's great to know when we have a vision of faith about death, because death is a very hard time of departure. And it was for Jesus too, and it was for his disciples, and it is for a family when a family member is leaving their time in this world. That our faith allows us, that our sadness doesn't close us down and block us. Sadness is important. It has to be respected and honored. It's not something we can brush aside or ignore. But at the same time, it's not the ultimate word. It's not the final word because of our faith. And this is the time of Easter, the time of resurrection. And especially if we Christians can't do this, like in what a situation are others who don't have faith in the resurrection. In life forever in glory with God. And then if we have that faith, then a lot of other things can happen because we see beyond the end. Because the end of so many good things is so sad. And in that context, in the Last Supper, it's brilliant because while there's a tremendous sadness and the disciples don't even know a fraction of what it's going to be, and through the passion, death, the cruelty, the horrors of suffering inflicted, the hatred expressed, Jesus has that calm in his heart. And it's coming from a very deep source. And the text here at the beginning of the account of the Passion in John 13 is very powerful. And Jesus said, I'm telling you these things so that you may believe, and these words are so powerful, that I am. And in the text here, they're written in capital letters and uppercase letters, as you say in America. And that I am. The word that Moses heard when he asked, who are you? And the answer was, I am. So that you may believe that I am. And there are more rich thoughts here, but we're going to leave it like that for today, because you're smart people, so you can read it and have wonderful joy in reading these texts and pondering them. Thank you so much for joining in this beautiful field here with this harvest. May you be blessed today and glean today for those in need. In our prayer for starters, maybe sharing a word of encouragement with somebody who's down. See you later, alligators.